Grüß Gott und herzlich willkommen beim Bürgertreff Gesundheit Hannover. Today in English, we welcome our very special guest, Dr. Brian Clement from the Hippocrates Health Institute in Florida, HHI. Dr. Clement, welcome.
So nice to be with you in Germany there.
Thank you. And we take the computer for support to show the wonderful place Dr. Clement is sitting right now. We have a special homepage. It's called talk.vonabc.de, and we have a subsite, and this is this one, and I make it a little bit larger. Okay, here's the headline. I chose this headline to provoke the enemies of Dr. Clement. I hope it works.
There's plenty of them.
And we start with the place. Okay, now this is a map where the Hippocrates Institute is located. It's a wonderful place. If we go here, you can see that. And if you look at the map where it's located, it's a very luxurious neighborhood. There is a rather famous golf club, and there is something called Mar-a-Lago roundabout there here, and the Trump golf cart. First question, did you ever go to one of those places?
Yes, I've been to Mar-a-Lago. I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump, so that you know that.
No, but you have
those of us in America that have conscience and compassion and empathy couldn't possibly support him.
Oh, okay.
So, I've been there. As a matter of fact, his former wife attends Hippocrates programs here.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Very interesting. Now let's go back to the computer. And now we want to show you the place in a little bit introduction. We have on our channel, Kosmologie-Mikronährstoffe, we have a special playlist. Not all of the 329 videos are with Dr. Clement, but more than 75 of them. And there is a sort of documentary, and I take the first part of it to show, just in silence to watch the place. Okay, so the rest you can watch in the playlist, which would be this one again, and just a little bit commentary to the other videos you can find there. Okay, it starts with a lecture in Germany where Dr. Clement tells something of what he will tell today as well about his personal life to the Hippocrates Institute and with the Hippocrates Institute. Then there is three documentaries, a 6-minute, a 12-minute, and a 70-minute documentary about the Hippocrates Institute. You can find all the information, what as a guest or a patient you can find there. Something about the reed grass here. Then there is an interview with a German guy, another German guy, all very informative about the content of what the Hippocrates Health Institute does in practice every day. Some lectures here. I really enjoyed this one, a TEDx lecture from Brian Clement, and this one, and question and answers, and so on. So now let's go out of the playlist. Now we start with chapter number 1. In this interview, you have 3 chapters, the time before N-Wigmore, the time after N-Wigmore, with N-Wigmore, and the time after N-Wigmore. And for that, we go into the biography notes of the Hippocrates Institute homepage. You find the text here. Now, starting with this text, Dr. Clement was a typical American growing up in New Jersey and a pioneer in the field of obesity. Dr. Clement, your story. Tell us your story.
Well, you know, when Germans and people around the world picture Americans, they see us as big, heavy people.
Yes.
But when I was big and heavy, it wasn't the American standard. I was an overeater and grew up in a wonderful family that loved me, but they loved me like German mothers and fathers do with food. So every day I got cake and I got sausage and I got hot dogs and I got soda.
The standard American diet.
Standard American diet, which, by the way, for the listeners in Europe, was influenced by the English and the German diet. If you really look at our diet, we took what you did bad and made it worse.
Okay.
And so being a man, they never said I was fat. They always said I was big. So of course, in my mind at that point, I had a great imagination. I thought, well, big means strong. And the only strength I had was in my belly. It was gigantic. And so was fortunate at a very young age, 19, 20 years old, when I found myself struggling to walk upstairs. A woman who was in her 70s grabbed me and said, "You're going to die." Now, when you're 20 years old, you don't think you're going to die, but it resonated with me. It made sense. And told me about how she had 40 years before healed cancer. Now, that was an odd thing for me because every time I heard the word cancer, I was at a funeral home. One of my aunts or uncles died of cancer. So I thought once you had that disease, you inevitably were finished. And it was interesting enough to me, and she provoked me to lose about 80 kilos in 1.5 years. And I gave up smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day, gave up smoking marijuana, which I was playing drums in rock bands, even when I was at university, and gave that up in one day. And my life transformed. And the story is not about losing weight, it's about gaining humanity. And when I look back at what really changed me is I felt like a human being for the first time. And when you look at the biology of all of this, that's what Anne Wigmore, our founder, discovered. Remember, she was
let's not start with Anne Wigmore. That's chapter 2. Let's remain with your youth, a 19, 20-year-old. There's a story with a friend of with a girlfriend of yours and her friend's boyfriend.
Yeah.
Tell us that story.
Oh yeah. So it's really funny, you know, my girlfriend, we were very close in those days. I probably forget her name now, but you know, she had a friend, and you know, he just couldn't believe, because he watched this transformation, physical transformation. You know, we were too young and insecure at that point to really recognize the extraordinary shift in awareness that was happening. Now, I was still more interested in sex than I was saving the world at that point. Nothing wrong with that, by the way, at 20 years old. But you know, he also was a weird guy, you know, because he was eating this way, and very, very few people did. You know, now America appears to be a vegan paradise, a plant-based paradise. It's not so. There's a growing group of people. 2 years ago, we raised in veganism as 2,000%. That's a lot of people. But still, remember, on the globe, there's about 4 or 5% of us that live on a vegan diet. Now, recognize that the indigenous people around the world are close to being vegan. 60% of the world's population today, as we speak, literally eat primarily plant-based diets. So
yes.
Yeah, Deutschland and Holland and here in France, we're the minority. I mean, yes. White people, you know, we don't like to be called minorities, but we are a big minority with this one.
On the planet, yes.
On the planet. I mean,
yes.
And yes, people eat meat because sadly, we've had this pecking order, this ideology that we all want to be like the kings and queens and princesses and the presidents, and we want to live like the elite, and we want to live like the wealthy. But let's go back 100 years ago. The only people that were really sick with chronic problems in were the elite.
Yes, the nobles.
They were the people eating meat and eating dairy food.
Now let me ask you, in your notes on your homepage, they stated that you hid the fact that you changed from meat eating to vegetarian from your family. I was curious, how can you hid this for 1.5 years from your parents? How did you do that?
Not very easily. Remember, I'm Irish heritage, and the Irish are good at that. We were under the thumb of the English for so many years. We had to learn how to do things in the back way.
Yeah, but when you had Thanksgiving, for example, in that period where you were hiding, where you were an undercover vegetarian, or even vegan. So, now you're sitting at the table and you don't eat the turkey.
Didn't eat the turkey. Didn't eat the butter. Didn't eat all of this.
And no questions.
Yeah. Well, they would ask questions, and I was too dumb to give the right answer. Okay. I should have said a doctor told me to do it. That's the real answer you give people. They'll all shut up then.
Yes.
I say a doctor told. But back then I used to say, I don't feel like it today. I'm filled, the sort of silly answers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but.
Okay. And then you went to college. In my research, I learned that you studied chemistry and biology and biochemistry. Is that correct?
Correct. And I was studying even oceanographic science and biology. I studied a wide variety of things, and I didn't until later, because there wasn't a course, and sadly today on the planet Earth, there's not one course that teaches you legitimate healthcare. The best we have is in Europe. In Lithuania, a group of us, Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Furman, we got together and we created a curriculum in a Lithuanian school that's taught in English. And you can get
state university?
Yes.
Okay.
And everything there, I think, is state. I don't know if they have private, but you can get a master's degree or a doctorate degree in lifestyle medicine. And the curriculum's plant-based. The curriculum comes out of the work Dr. Campbell did and some of Hippocrates, and
yes,
etc. But
I wanted to ask you, with this term lifestyle medicine, yes. That is I asked this Michael Klepper 2 days ago, that is something different from functional medicine.
Oh, yes.
How would you see the differences?
Well, I mean, we were the founders of lifestyle medicine, and we'll talk about that in the next segment. It all began in 1956 when Wigmore realized that what was missing in healthcare was you taking responsibility as the patient. And still today, it's still the same. Naturopathic doctors, homeopathic doctors, mainstream allopathic doctors, all have a way to do this. You come to me, you pay me, and I heal you. That's wrong. It's the wrong approach. So lifestyle medicine is you come to us, we educate you, we support you, we treat you, but ultimately you go home and heal you, not temporarily, but permanently. So why we've been so incredibly successful here at this institute, when people have failed around the world in what they come here and thousands have healed themselves. Not because we have magic, it's common sense. I mean,
yes.
If you're eating bad food to get a heart attack or a stroke or a cancer, you stop it and the chances go down. If you're sitting on your ass as I did and not exercising and you start to exercise, you become healthy. So, and the number one thing we teach here, everyone gets private sessions and group sessions on psychotherapy. Because the real problem we have is not a dietary problem, it's an emotional and psychological problem.
Yes. So if you take your approach and you compare it with the functional the Institute of Functional Medicine at the Cleveland Clinic, what would be the main difference?
A major difference. One is about you, and the other is about making money. That's
okay. I let it stay there. Now let's go back to your college before you met Wigmore. When was your bachelor in biochemistry and biology?
In 1973 or 4.
So shortly before you went to Boston.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. In 75, I joined the team.
And did you ever go for a master in those subjects?
Yeah, I studied enough so that later they gave me enough credits for a master's, and I went on for my doctorate degree.
Oh, you have a master. You have a master in those subjects.
Yeah, they gave me
Okay.
enough and different. You know, it was wonderful. I could tailor the program. I didn't have to go through a conventional where you
Okay.
have to do everything. But I took enough subjects. Matter of fact, I had 3 times more
Yeah.
subjects and credits than necessary. So they said okay.
Okay.
And then I went on to a doctorate program back when I was around 50 years old.
Do you remember the doctorate thesis you went about?
Yes, it was about the biofrequency fields of food being more important for
Okay.
nutrition,
Very good.
more important than nutrients for nutrition.
So we have the bachelor, the master, the PhD, and then we have LN, that's legal nurse?
No. It's in the state of Florida, we're licensed nutritionists.
Oh, it's something completely different. Okay. I was wondering about the nurse.
I'd be an illegal nurse.
So you are a licensed nutritionist and you are a naturopathic medicine doctor, right?
Yes, I am.
Where did you go for that? What college did you attend?
USAT, University of Science, Arts, and Technology. And
okay.
The reality is we have that degree, but in the state of Florida, I can't practice naturopathic medicine.
Okay, so we are now 1974, somewhere around. And now, before we meet Ann Wigmore, there is a special quality of your life biography. You are a drummer, right?
Yes.
Tell us that story. When did that start?
I still drum. I've been very blessed.
When did that start? When did you start drumming?
When I was 5.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So my grandfather, he grew up very poor in the United States, near New York. And he always loved the big bands in his era, but he couldn't afford to drum. And so when I was a little boy at 1 and 2 and 3, he would give me paper drums and I would break them. And so he finally bought me a real set and got lessons at 5. And by the time I was 12, I was playing and making money.
In a band?
Yes, in a band. And it was really funny because, of course, here in the United States, like Europe then, you had to be 18 or 21 to play in a nightclub.
Yes.
But he would come in with me. He was a little guy with a hat and a mustache. And he would come and say, if I was making $20, he would give the man $20 and say, the kid is 18 and I'm here to prove it. So he would sit there all night with me. So then by the time I was in high school, we were out playing, and then through university, I played, etc. And we still play. Next Tuesday here on the campus, we're filled with guests from all over the world here. We have the Wheatgrass Band come in. That's the name of the band.
Very good. Yeah. So now 1974, 75, you wanted to do the intention to open a health institute. What sort of health institute did you want to open before you changed your mind and stayed in Boston?
It was certainly going to be plant-based, but it was going to be a natural setting. So we were going to be in the state of Oregon, which is on the western part of the United States, very natural. Along the coast there, we were going to purchase land and have it open from April till October, when the weather was reasonable. You know, it's sort of like southern Germany weather there.
Yes.
So you don't want it in November or January. And we were going to do hiking and serve plant-based raw food and juices to people. But then I went to visit Hippocrates in 1975 with my then wife, who was from Oregon, from the state. And they said, come and work here. And, you know, I had no intent to live in a cold and dark city. Think of it as the northern part of Germany, where it's really bad in the middle of winter, you know, and it's raining and cloudy and nasty all of the time.
That sounds like Boston, yes.
I know, you have it. I wasn't that interested in it, but you know, I'm not one of these guys who think I hear voices, but I did hear a voice at time. And I always slept well, and I do still. The voice said, do this.
Yes, just a minute, not so fast. you had read this book to show the listeners how the book looks like. You had read this book, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't write that book. Ann Wigmore wrote that book.
Yeah, but you have read it.
Oh, yes, yes.
And that was the reason why you visited Ann Wigmore.
Oh, absolutely. The real reason I visited Ann Wigmore is one summer, I was a vegan, but one summer it was very, very, very hot. It was something like 45 degrees every day for 30 days. And I just stopped cooking food. I didn't even consciously think of it. I just couldn't eat cooked food. It was too hot. And boy, did I feel good. And it went to 2 months. And then I went on this long fast. And I never felt better in my life. I remember when I gave up animal foods, I said,
when you say fasting, do you mean water fasting?
Yeah, that particular one was water fasting. I'm no longer an advocate of that, but we can speak about that later. So I went to visit her because I was on the diet. And I remember I read her book, the one you just showed. And I said, wow, Be Your Own Doctor pretty much was saying that what I was doing was the right way to live. And I was feeling absolutely like it was the right way to live. I felt like I had more energy than a bull. It was just shocking.
Okay. Was it easy to get in contact? Did you pick up the phone and say, Dr. Wigmore, I want to come. Yeah. Can I come?
Remember, in those days, in the 60s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was very casual. It was very laid back. And it was, my generation were hippies. So,
yes.
You know, it was that kind of an environment. So I walked in and people were happy to see me and I was happy to see them. And
okay, so stop. You walked into what? Okay, an apartment? How many rooms? No. A clinic?
It was a center in the heart of Boston. Okay. A beautiful brownstone that was a 250-year-old building.
How many stories from Ann Wigmore?
6 stories.
Oh, all the 6 stories were Ann Wigmore?
But if you could picture some of those beautiful buildings in Hamburg, or yes. In Munich, even better yet, Munich, where yes. the walls are carved by yes. hand and the wallpaper was metal. You know, it was just eloquent. It was beautiful. And it was traditional and filled with life. You know, the second floor was wheatgrass and sunflower and it was like a garden. And even when it was snowing outside, you felt like you were in the middle of a forest. And so it was a very unique feeling. But Ann Wigmore approached me and we must have had a connection at that point and said she wanted me to work. And my ambition and the voice I heard, I didn't know what I would do, but I was ambitious enough to try it and never looked back.
And when she approached you, how many people were working for Ann Wigmore in those
About
days?
60 people.
60 people?
Yeah, 60.
That's a lot. How many people are in the HHI today working?
Before what we're all experiencing now, there were 160.
Okay. And then something strange happened. Ann Wigmore went to Sweden. Why did she do that?
Well, let's go and slow down. So after I was there a short time, they realized I was an auditor. I knew how to speak to people. And okay. So they put a suit on me, and when the guests would come, I'd be there. And then they said, you know, let's bring this back to Europe.
Okay.
And so I anticipated I'd be in Europe for 2 months, and I lived there for 3 years.
And did Ann Wigmore go with you?
Not all of the time, but she would come in and out. So I was fortunate. In 1977, I directed the original Living Food Center.
Yeah, but that's later. You started out in 76 to go to Europe?
77.
77. And who organized that going to Europe?
Different groups. There was a big interest of plant-based movement then. Back in the 70s and 60s, if you said health, everyone was plant-based. There was no paleo diet, no yes. ketogenic diet. You know, everyone knew, as they should today, that if you wanted to be healthy and live a long life without disease, it's plant-based. So many of these organizations, I wouldn't say they were that big, but when I would come, I would have 200-300 people in a room to speak.
So that was sort of a lecture tour in the yes. beginning.
And then it became, you know,
in those days, which was the first country?
I first went to Holland.
Okay.
And it was really, really funny because in every language I can say, how is everyone? I could never master it in Dutch.
Okay.
You think German's hard, Dutch is a lot harder.
Yes, yes.
And then, of course, I went to Denmark
Okay.
and Norway. And back then in Scandinavia, there were health centers all over the countries.
And now you missed Sweden. Why did you miss Sweden?
I was going to go to Sweden next, but Norway was a hot spot. This little tiny country then had about 45 centers, and I must have talked at 35 of those centers.
Okay.
North to the south. And Sweden had maybe 20 centers, and I must have spoke at 12 of those centers. And then, of course, I went to Germany.
No, not so fast. When did Anne Wigmore go to Sweden?
So when I would be in certain countries, we would arrange tours when I was solo and arrange tours, bigger tours, when Anne was here.
Okay.
One of the great Anne Wigmore stories, during the 1970s, we brought her from the United States to the Opera Hall in Stockholm.
Okay.
And the woman who organized it was the most popular television personality in the day. Barbara Lindstrom was her name.
Okay.
And not only was it completely filled, people were standing on the walls. And to me, this was unbelievable, because in the United States, and you would not have had that kind of response. But because the Scandinavians were much, much more health-minded than even now, to be candid with you. It was that kind of response.
Okay.
I remember I went to Germany. I was
not so fast. Not so fast.
Okay.
And in that Stockholm Opera Hall,
Yeah.
is that the place where Anna Maria met Anne Wigmore?
No. Now it goes to 1978.
Okay.
Now, Anna Maria, my now wife, who directed one of the 20 centers called Home the Garden. No, excuse me. Home the Garden is what I directed in Denmark. Brendel is what she directed. Started by a Danish woman who reversed crippling arthritis. She saw Anne Wigmore at the Opera Hall, but she also saw Anne Wigmore at a lecture I wasn't at. I was living in Switzerland then, and Anne went back to Scandinavia, went to Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and she came to the center that Anna Maria was directing. And she became so excited because in Europe, nobody was dealing with cancer. And Anne Wigmore had healed stage 4 cancer. And that's what we have been best known for. Although people come here with every problem and no problems. Actors come here, athletes come here. Muhammad Ali won his fights on this diet. Anthony Hopkins lives this way. And poor people do. So we're not just for elite famous people. We have programs that everyone can afford to come to. And so Anna Maria got all excited and then said, can I come over to visit you? And before that happened, in 1978, Anne Wigmore and I went back to Stockholm, and we were the 2.5 days we did a conference at a very upscale vegan restaurant that opened. It was beautiful. Rarely do you see them even today, fancy like it. If you've ever been to the first vegetarian restaurant in Zurich.
In Zurich, yeah, I know that one.
It was sort of like that.
That's very luxurious, yes.
But I saw her and instantly fell in love. And I love her more every day. I mean, we've had a 40-year relationship.
What's your secret, 40 years of marriage?
I think both of us are passionate about the same thing. And both of us are humble. We recognize we need one another.
You mentioned that you have been living in Switzerland before you met your future wife. Yeah. How did that come about?
Well, one of now he's like my brother, Dr. Christian Schaller, opened a center called Foundation Soleil.
Oh, you're friends of the Schaller, the famous Schaller who is issuing the Schaller briefs. Okay.
Absolutely. So Dr. Schaller and I hit it off. And he had a nonprofit, and it was wonderful because it was very well funded. And so when he wanted living food, he brought Brian Clement in. When he wanted water births, he brought La Boye in. It was just an amazing experience. I was young, and it was an amazing experience. And he gave me, the opportunity to grow as a man who also had to take responsibility. And we have grown to be very close over the years. He was a heroic doctor and got a lot of flack. The medical societies in Europe condemned him because he said, look, health comes from your eating habits and the way you think. And I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of people he saved, but when I'm in French-speaking parts of Europe still, he comes and translates. And it's funny, he could do the lectures without me, so we make fun of him.
Now, when you are in Switzerland, did you ever realize Maximilian Bircher-Benner?
Oh, absolutely. I went to the Benner Clinic, and I wish it was still there. And in Germany, I went to all the clinics.
How about Max Otto Brucker?
No, I don't know who that
Oh,
is.
you haven't been to Lahnstein?
No, I haven't.
Because Max Otto Brucker is close to the Hippocrates philosophy in his healing practice in those 70, 80, 90 years. He died in 2009, I believe. Okay, so now we know how it came about that you found your wife. Okay.
Yeah.
Now then someday you have become a very important this is the book of the Christine Nolfi.
Oh, yeah, Dr. Nolfi.
Tell us that story.
So anyway, in Switzerland, and now we start to travel throughout Europe and bring the Hippocrates program there. And this wonderful doctor called Dr. Scud Anderson took the directorship of Hopfgarten. It means hops garden, maybe similar in Deutsch, but Hopfgarten. And it was on the Baltic Sea. And Dr. Nolfi, 100 years ago, was a medical doctor and had breast cancer. And she was smart enough as a doctor to know that the treatments would not have helped her, that may have hurt her. So she read a book from Gerson about raw food.
Max Gerson?
Yeah.
And the 50 cases?
Exactly.
Okay.
No, it was after that. It was one of
the Gerson therapy, probably.
Exactly. One of the first.
From Charlotte Gerson, okay.
Yeah. And Charlotte just died last year. I loved her. She was great. Yes. But read the book and got onto a rowboat and stayed on an island between Sweden and Denmark and came back well in September. And her medical colleagues were so angry that they took her license away.
Because she healed herself.
Yeah, they expected her to die, as they still do. They get angry when you get well or do something that's not mainstream. So what happened is they said she was very Germanic, and I hope that doesn't offend any of you, but Germans have a reputation to be very strict and very strong. Yes. They said she was like that. So the next day or that week, she opened up this center, and she made it a rooming house, a boarding house that just happened to serve raw food. And they couldn't stop her. So she said, I'm not a doctor anymore. I have a rooming house. I own the rooming house. And at my rooming house, I serve raw food.
Sounds like Dr. Brian Clement.
Yeah, a little stubborn. I hang out with the stubborn. We only the stubborn type.
Well, your enemies didn't manage to kill you, did they?
Not yet. Okay. And I'm almost 70. Next year I'll be 70, and I'm looking forward to another 70 years, to be honest with you. But the reality is that was a great gift, because Dr. Anderson was a beautiful human being. He had lost his wife at 39 to cancer. He was a practicing medical doctor, was working 60 hours a week to have the money to fund this center. It wasn't making money there. And I had the privilege to direct the original Living and Raw Food Center, which was started by Dr. Nolfi a century ago now. And it was wonderful because 2 or 3 of the employees were very, very young, and they had worked with her then. They were my age now then, and they would tell stories about her. And the funniest story about Dr. Nolfi is her main medicine was raw garlic. Now,
is that why you tried garlic as a juice?
Yeah, we don't fry it, we juice it. But you have to remember that Europe, other than the Italians or the Spanish, nobody used garlic, 100 years ago. And so everyone smelled like garlic. And they would come, the guests would come into the bus and go to this little town called Homnebeck, which was on the coast, not far, 15 minutes away. But the owner of the bus company called up very angry. He said, "We're not going to let your people on the bus anymore." So Dr. Nolfi said, "Great, now they have to walk," and hung up.
Very good. Now let's come back to, we have only an hour for the interview. Let's go back to America. In 1980, you returned to the United States and Boston, and then Ann Wigmore offered you the position of director. How did that come about? Why did she do that?
Most likely she didn't have anyone else to ask. And I was foolish enough to say yes.
Okay. And 7 years later, you decided alone or with Ann Wigmore together to move? How did that come about?
Even though I was a director, and the day I became a director, the world became totally different. Now remember, back in 1980, 75% of the people that came here then, or to Boston then, were very, very, very sick. Many were told they were going to die. So now I was a director. I wasn't a guy walking around telling stories and teaching classes. These people were in my hands. So I instantly realized that I didn't know how to run a business, and Ann Wigmore certainly didn't. And so we started to create a board of directors. And so we brought, what blenders are, osterizing blenders?
Yes.
Well, we brought the lady that was married to the owner who had healed arthritis on the program. A very famous family in America called the Cabots. We brought one of those on. And these were all people living this way. And they brought their colleagues and friends, and we put a real board of directors together. And the funniest story was we had a man that was sitting, he was a cousin of Oster, and he was sitting then on the board of General Foods and General Motors, two of the world's biggest corporations in those days.
A little bit larger than the Ann Wigmore Institute.
Much, to say the least. We weren't even a drop in the ocean at that point. So he was funny because back then nobody had crew cuts. He had a crew cut and wore, very tight, and he didn't say anything. So we thought he was angry at us. And after a week, he came back with a big, thick report. And here's what it basically said: "You're wonderful, you great, you founded this, and if you stay in Boston, you're going to go out of business."
Oh. Okay.
Second page was, "It snows here, it rains here, it's stinky here, it's noisy here, it's dark here. Find a new home." So the board voted at that point to move somewhere, and we looked all over North America, from the east to Hawaii, and it came down between Santa Barbara, California, and Palm Beach, Florida. And Palm Beach won out, and we moved down here in '87, and Ann Wigmore decided to stay behind then. She was much older at that point, and we had purchased a beautiful home right next to the original institute that we remodeled, redid, and that was going to be her permanent residence. And in the early '90s, it burned down, and she died as smoke inhalation.
1994.
Yeah, 90. It was a horrible, horrible thing that happened.
But what's the story about Costa Rica then? Something to do with Ann Wigmore?
Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico?
Puerto Rico.
Oh, okay, not Costa Rica?
No, not Costa Rica is a little nicer than Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is pretty much an Americanized island, not far from New York. An hour and a half, you're there. And before her death, she went to Puerto Rico, and people started to use her name, and they put a program together there. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's sort of a nice place to take a vacation, but it's not quite what we have,
So she wasn't affiliated as much as
they... No, wasn't affiliated with us.
Okay, now the story is rather intriguing. When you went down to Florida, you had to build a road, I believe, and all other obstacles. How about the starting of this very difficult task?
This is really funny because I didn't know shit. I didn't know about building. I didn't know about government. I thought everything worked normal, I was a musician. I could get on a plane and fly to Munich and tonight not speak the language and play perfectly well with other musicians there. I thought that's how the world worked. Boy, was I surprised. And here's a wonderful German story. So here in West Palm Beach, Florida, we have a building commission, a building board, who their whole job is to make your life miserable, I think. And also they do it to make money. And who was the big shot there? A German American from Germany. Now, can you imagine how strict he was? And this is a great story. So I go down to one of the meetings and they say, the road you have isn't legal to use to come to Hippocrates. Now, it took all I had not to yell. So I said, okay, does that mean I have to buy a helicopter and go from the road we have to use and bring them onto the property? You've been letting me use that road. They said, you can't use that road. You have to build a new road. So I said, okay. Then I realized it cost $250,000, about 200,000 euros. So okay was the wrong thing to say. So this was learning, you know, we had to put pipes in, we had to do this. The most frightening thing to me, because I knew nothing about building, is I had to pay them $125,000 for the privilege for them to charge me for water. So I said, is that going to cover my water for 10 years? They said, no, we won't even give you water unless you give us $125,000. And, you know, in Germany, it's the same, but this was all new to me. So it was, we call it in English, a birth by fire.
Okay. So then now you are down in Florida and now the success starts. So we don't have that much time left. So let's do some special topics. What's the Hippocrates Health Institute approach to coffee? Good, bad, or ugly?
Bad. Coffee is a high acidity. There's not a legitimate doctor on any side of the discussion that doesn't tell you acidity ages you and also promotes disease.
Okay. So let's go back to this very nasty headline, nasty in the opinion of your enemies.
Right.
The work of a genius in progress, and we discussed the differences to functional medicine, and there's a difference to natural medicine as well. How would you define the demarcation line to natural medicine from the
natural medicine would be what the Germans have been doing for hundreds of years. That's homeopathic medicine, that's herbal medicine, naturopathic medicine, taking baths. Father Kneipp, a German priest.
Sebastian Kneipp, yes.
He was doing natural medicine. Arnold Ehret, in 200 years ago, 150 years ago.
How is your position to the Arnold Ehret mucus-free diet?
Well, he was certainly way ahead of most people. Now, we've learned a lot in 150 years. But the fact of the matter is, I'm not one that condemns because we've learned something. I think everyone contributes. I think most people get egocentric. They think they know everything, and I don't think I know everything. The older I get, I realize I know less. But the fact is, Arnold Ehret was an influence to me. Christine Nolfi was an influence to me.
How about Shelton?
Oh, incredible influence to us. Food combination. They were the people who basically came up with this.
Would you say, I had this theoretical discussion with Michael Klepper and Joel Fuhrman, water fasting in the tradition of Shelton, would you say what you have learned over the decades with the Hippocrates Institute, if you take wheatgrass juice, 50% sprouts, there is no need for water fasting?
There is no need. As a matter of fact, I will say it loud and clear. Your listeners may want to watch the documentary on Netflix called Fasting. We're a big part of that. But what I'll say is that water fasting does not clean the body as well, that people suffer because your blood sugar is gyrating and you're feeling hungry if you're not used to fasting. And more important than anything, in the sprouts and the wheatgrass, you have these phytochemicals that kill viruses. They kill bacteria. You don't have that in water. Now, this comes from a religious fervor. Now, go back to Germany 200-300 years ago. The original health centers were monasteries. They were nunneries. And the very elite, the kings, queens, and princesses, would go and hang out there for a week. And in Germany, they do water fast because you have a very Lutheran type of idea. Suffer, you're bad. And in France, they're a little looser. They did break fast. but they were like the precursors to Hippocrates and other health centers. So I'm not a major fan of water fasting. I think really healthy people doing short water fast are okay, but I'd still discourage it. With cancer, I absolutely discourage it. With autoimmune disease, I absolutely discourage it. Remember, I've done 52-day fast myself, 40-day fast. I put tens of thousands of people on water fast and thousands more on juice fasting. And I observed the differences. And we do blood profiles here. We do
how do you explain that people like the True North Center don't see that the way you do?
They don't see it, but you know, and I'll give them credit. You know, they're doing it in a way that's accruing data, accruing literature, and I'm far more with them than I'm against them. You know, I'm not against anyone. Anyone that's helping somebody, I'm for it. And I know these people. These are good people, honest people. And if they are the ones who say fasting really helps, and if what they're saying is water fasting, that's much better than somebody saying eat the paleo diet or the ketogenic diet.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm a cheerleader for what's good. Maybe we don't agree with every single word together, but again, have you ever found that with human beings?
In one of your interviews with one of the German guys on the film list, you were talking about Anthony Williams.
Oh, yes.
In 1975, he got this channeling
ability.
Celery juice. How is your position? You don't need celery juice, I suppose, because wheatgrass is much better. But what's your position in celery juice, this hype of celery juice? And Anthony Williams as a medium?
Back in the 70s, around that time, we created green juice. So Hippocrates was the very first place in the world we said green juice. And why we did that is high amounts of wheatgrass juice was nauseating to most people. So it wasn't we were smart and said, this is great, it's wonderful, and I'm channeling it. It was a very practical thing. We said, shit, if we can't get them to drink a lot of green wheatgrass, let's make something else green. And little did we know it was genius. I should take credit for it, but now we know sunflower sprouts are anti-cancer. They're complete protein. They have essential fats for energy, for your brain, for your body. They help your libido. We know pea green sprouts, which we put in there, help to break down proteins. And remember, all viruses, bacteria, and cancers are proteins. You know, and we always put celery juice in there.
Oh, you had the celery juice then.
So
but as part of the total juice, okay.
So I don't know Anthony, but I know that much of what he says is correct. You know, so whoever he's channeling must be on the right channel.
Okay, let's dig into this channeling business. What's your worldview? Do you have a spiritual worldview, like there's life after life and there's reincarnation or karma, or do you have a different worldview?
Well, you know, we can call it all of those things to make it easier so we don't labor over it. But I think there's perpetual life, continual life. I don't think there's an end. I don't think there's a beginning. The human concept of A and Z, one in a zillion, is to make us feel secure in our own insecurities. Many of the books I've written, Emo Spirit, discuss this.
Okay. Now, let's come to Dr. Urs Hochstrasser. Did you ever meet him?
No.
Okay. And now to Anne Wigmore and Lithuania. We talked about the university degrees, and there's a monument now for Anne Wigmore. Tell us a story about the monument.
So somebody we haven't discussed that we must discuss is the man who was at Anne Wigmore's side in the 1960s and 70s was Viktoras Kulvinskas.
Right.
Who 35 years ago had his book, Survival in the 21st Century, published in German. So I'm sure you can still get that. Viktoras Kulvinskas was a genius. He's still a genius. He was helping to put men on the moon. He was a computer scientist and worked at the top universities, MIT, et cetera, installing computers, and was sick as a dog because he was a typical intellectual on coffee, on candy bars, on cigarettes, not eating, working 2 days straight. You know these people, and was dying. He was like this. He was a rail. He was like a pencil, skinny, and went to all the top doctors, of course, and they didn't know what it was because they couldn't diagnose what he had, because he didn't have cancer and he was just malnourished, and they had no concept of what. Today they don't have a concept of that, and so basically he was from Lithuania, interesting enough. His family fled Lithuania when he was 2 or 3 years old. And one of his friends said, there's a crazy Lithuanian over in Boston, and he was at MIT at that point, 10 minutes away, who's putting grass up people's ass and making them drink it. Yeah. He was fed up, so he said he went over, he got on the program, healed himself, and took his wonderful heart and genius and became the science, the brains behind the operation. Anne Wigmore was the heart. She was the passion. She was a spiritual leader. Victoris was the scientist and still remains part of our program here. And I was the lucky one. You know, I did work, but not the hard work they did. You know, the first generation always has to take the forest and make the roadway through it. We improved the roadway, maybe, but the fact is we were given a great foundation by Anne and by Victoris. And so that's how that happened. And Victoris brought sunflower greens to the world. I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm eating sunflower greens. These are complete foods. They have an anti-cancer agent in it. So you don't have to have cancer to not want it. So you eat that every day. What it makes is incredible juice.
Without the wheatgrass juice or with the wheatgrass juice?
Without. Wheatgrass juice has it second. Many of the books I write for the science community are called Food is Medicine, or the most important books are Food is Medicine. It's a 3-volume series. It's all about the science, why this heals disease, why it prevents aging. Why, yeah.
There's one question I should ask you. Wheatgrass has to be grown in the kitchen without direct sunlight. Is that correct?
You don't want it, no, it can be in the kitchen in indirect sunlight. We got not direct. You don't want it on a summer's day in the middle of a hot sun.
Why not?
Think of it as a baby that was born on August the 15th. You don't take the baby out at 12 o'clock and put them in the sun.
Oh. So it burns the young plant, and it's no good.
Not great. So, you know, but the good news is in the middle of a snowstorm in Germany or anywhere in Europe, you can grow this in January.
Coming back to this cancer business, you have these levels: gold, silver, gold, and platinum. I understand if someone has cancer in a late stage, he has to be on the platinum level. Is that right?
That's correct. So that's from my book, Life Force, one of my 30 books. And what you have to understand is that the person who comes here who's an Olympic athlete and the person that comes here who has stage 4 cancer are on the same program. So if you want the highest energy, the highest nutrition, the highest vitality, so you can thrive, not just survive, but thrive, you've got to be at the platinum level.
And that means 50% sprouts every day,
exactly.
Wheatgrass juice, green juice, and raw food.
Exactly. So,
and supplements.
And living food supplements. You know, most supplements are dangerous. Another book I wrote, Supplements Exposed, which is in Dutch, but not in German, I don't
No, you need the supplements, in your opinion, which are embedded in the matrix of the living surroundings.
Exactly.
Okay.
I mean, you know, none of us live next to a lake that has algae in it, so that you can get a supplement. None of us are bees, so we don't get flower pollen. You know, and these are, you know, I hate the word superfood. I'd rather call them superior food.
What's your personal supplementation protocol every day? What do you personally take as a supplement with the vitamins?
I take a lot because, yeah, I mean, I lift heavy weights 3 days a week. I'm a weightlifter. I work, you know, I don't work. I have fun, I should say, 15 hours a day, 6 days a week. Okay. I usually travel the world 150 to 200 days a year. So I'm taking 35 supplements a day.
How about vitamin D? How much units do you take?
Well, our vitamin D is made out of a vine. It's completely alive. And so I'm taking about 20,000 units a day.
So that's the same I take, okay.
Yeah, and that's a good, and you can take more. There's nobody ever that found a level of vitamin D that was too much.
Do you
So
have, do you aim a special blood level, like for say 250 nanomoles or 100 nanograms per liter?
this is all blown out of proportion from the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay.
The one thing I want your listeners to think, is this a plant-based, whole food, living supplement, not cooked, not processed,
Yes.
not chemicals?
Yes.
These plant-based supplements, you could take 10 billion milligrams.
Oh, okay.
It's not going to hurt you. A man-made chemical you shouldn't take to begin with. It compromises your immune system.
Okay. So now I have a question, talking about one of your lectures, Revolution on the Doorstep. Would you agree that big tech is a terrorist organization against a healthy lifestyle?
Yes, no question. They work in coordination with the pharmaceutical industry and the allopathic doctors.
So I have the theory that the Nuremberg trials rules would apply for the AMA and it would be hanged, but what we won't have to discuss this now. No. Okay, veganism is mega out. Would you agree?
Yes. I mean, remember, veganism has become a hip, stylish thing, and Beyond Burgers and Impossible Burgers are not healthy diets. If you want to be healthy and strong, vital and conscious, and you want to save the planet, you don't buy a $1 billion burger. I mean, you know, and let me tell you, I don't want to sound tough. It took me decades to eat the way I do and love the way I eat. You know, so this is not an easy process. We're addicted. We have the mommy factor. My mommy gave me cake. My mommy gave me meat. My mommy gave me milk and said it was good. You have to break through that, because in a way you're rejecting, in your mind, you're rejecting the love of your mother. Your society said it. Your teacher said it. Nutritionists tell you this. Doctors tell you. They know nothing, but they tell you this. And the reality is, you've got to be so committed to yourself, not in an egocentric way, but in an authentic, respectful way, that you'll break through the noise. And before you know it, when you start to become more and more secure, you start to become more human, and you would become more human, you'll want to eat these foods. Remember this, every single species on Earth, except humans, in nature, eat 100% raw diet. There's no species other than humans. And this institute, for nearly 65 years, has proven what happens when you put people on raw food diets.
Yes.
We watch people heal disease. We watch people like me not age.
Is the Hippocrates Institute the only hidden diamond in the plant-based movement?
No.
Are there?
One, you know, I would say that we're the platinum level, but you know, not everyone's ready for the platinum level. Okay. Some of you want to take a weekend program where you eat vegan hot dogs at first, and if it gets you off sausages, God bless you. That's all I can say. So I don't think that we're the only. I think we're at the place where people aspire to come. So,
okay, so that gives me for two last questions. Our hour is over. The organization, the Truth About Health conferences, you attend them quite often. Who is organizing that?
A wonderful man. 8 years ago, in the middle of a cold winter day in New York City, Stephen Shore, who was a guest of ours here, I knew him and his family, had just sold his business and said he wanted to do something to help the planet and humans. And so he asked me, what did I think about a conference that Anna Marie and I would speak for 30 hours? And I said, easy. Do you have 40 hours? And so the first year we gave a free conference in the New York area, and we started Friday night and we went till Sunday night. And then the next year I said to Stephen, you know, we're not the only people that know things. Why don't you bring people in on different subjects? And before you know it, this wonderful Stephen created The Real Truth About Health. And there's been free conferences. They went from 3-day conferences to 10-day conferences. And we're not kidding around. We don't bring anyone on the stage who backs down. So we bring the world truth tellers. 2 years ago, we brought the woman from India who protects the seeds. We bring the top people against vaccines and why, who have the scientific data, not just opinions. We bring Dr. Esselstyn, Dr. Campbell, Dr. Furman, you know, the list goes, Pam Popper. and of course Anna Marina, and we sponsor most of these because we're in a way they do the work, but we're the partners.
Oh, the Hippocrates Institute is sponsoring?
Oh yes. You
Oh,
look
okay.
behind, we're sponsoring most of those. There won't be one next year because of this fiasco that the powers that be are putting all of us through. And the truth of the matter is, if you believe what's going on, I'm sad for you, because this is the biggest takeover of the human heart and consciousness in the history of humanity.
It's the biggest hoax in history of the humankind.
This makes the wars and the depressions look like nothing. They actually have people wanting to be away from one another, wearing masks. They have shut down the economy of the world. They want all of you to be vaccinated with poison. And now is the time we have to have a loving and quiet revolution. And I don't care who you are and where you're from. If you've never said the word nay or no, you better learn it now.
Yes. Well, we Germans have a history of dictatorships, and we seem not to have learned anything.
I know it. Well, don't think Americans are much different than you. We say we saved the world. We also brought the world down. We're the modern imperialist.
Yes,
the
American empire. Okay. You are in the business of advising governments, I read.
Yes, many times governments have come to us, and not all governments are horrible. Some governments really do have the interest of their citizens at hand. And so I counseled with the Indian government, worked with the prime minister there many years ago. In Ireland, I sat with the parliament there. And I won't say any of this was really successful, to be candid with you, but at least we made some inroads. Go to islands in the Caribbean, very small countries, worked. And we used to work indirectly with different states here. You have provinces in Germany, we have states. And I'd say the interest was much greater 30, 40 years ago than it is today. And there's more interest in the public today by far than there was 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. So I see a congruence. I see what's happening very soon is that if people have the courage to stand for truth, that we're going to eventually take over the insanity that's going on. You have corporations running governments around the world. It's not your leaders that do. You have people demanding health, and you're getting disease. Your government's promoting disease-causing methods, treatments, and foods and diet.
Yes.
Disease-causing work situations. Everyone says, oh, everyone should be working like they are at Google. Well, the truth of the matter, Google has stress. It's a lot less stressful than the average office building that you have in downtown Hamburg, though. The fact is, so we need to relook at the world, and we've done it before, and I'm positive humans can do it now. And I'm not an optimist because I believe in things like Mary Poppins. I'm an optimist because I really study history. And I know that when Mahatma Gandhi and Martin King did what they did, it was because they were focused, truthful, and willing to sacrifice their life for truth. And that's what we have to be now. We are at a pinnacle place in human history to either go into the light or go into the darkness. Yes. Come with us into the light. It's a lot more fun.
There was a special development in 2011 when the movie Fat, Sick and Nearly Dead was shown in the theaters. Do you have an opinion on Joe Cross?
I think the man was brilliant.
Okay.
There's many films. There's a new one that all of you should be watching out for later this year called Eating Our Way to Extinction. We're featured in there with a man coming from Europe and healing advanced cancer. But
okay.
They've really done the best job of anyone.
And who is doing the movie? Who's the organizer?
Branson, the nephew of Richard Branson.
Oh, okay.
So Anthony Robbins is in this. Doctors from Oxford are in this. We didn't kid around this time.
Okay.
What has happened in the past is that a lot of these films did not have the kind of people that could stand the scrutiny. This one, we put the top doctors, the top scientists.
Okay.
We didn't go to me and ask about fish.
But Forks Over Knives had quite some big shots.
They did, but then what they said with that is they didn't have proof of the data.
Oh, okay.
We made sure they have proof of it. So let me go back and say to you, my three favorite films of all sick and dead, I cried. And when something gives me...
Because of the truck driver, right?
The truck driver. Wasn't that beautiful?
Yes.
A lorry driver.
I think it was a main factor for the success of the movie.
I believe it.
The yellow T-shirt.
I believe it. Cowspiracy.
Yes.
I love it. Is this young boy who looks like a surfer boy from California. He works his way to the top environmental organizations in the world, and he beats the shit out of them on camera. And they throw him out. They say, well, if you're really interested in the environment, why don't you talk about vegan diets? And rather than say, you're right, we should do that, they threw him out. Oh. And one that's very frightening, but everyone should watch. You should make everyone sit down who fights you about eating animals and drinking milk from their bosom and watch Dominion. If you haven't seen Dominion, your country in Germany, all over Europe and here, if you're caught with a camera in a factory farm, you can go to jail. Yes. In this country, it's 10 years. And there are people in jail who film. In Australia, they don't have those laws. So the same factory farms that you have in Deutschland and we have here and they have in France, but they filmed it. You see that film and keep eating meat.
I've seen it, yes.
I mean,
it's a little bit not so amusing to watch. It's not for entertainment.
No, you should tie down everyone you know who eats animals and make them watch it.
Okay, let's finish with a more optimistic view. Looking at that wonderful place in California, in Florida, Hippocrates Health Institute, would you say that the surrounding, the nature of the place is a healing factor by itself?
Oh, no question. We've designed it with artists and people who really are spiritually inclined with landscape to piece it together for an ambiance, an environment, a healing mecca. And guests tell us that. Every time they arrive, every Sunday, people come here from all over the world, 52 Sundays a year. They say, in the first 24 hours, they say that. And remember this, part of it is the atmosphere and nature, but remember, people come here with the intent to heal. And it's just like, I was very sad last year when Notre Dame burned down. Now, I'm not a Catholic, but every time I could get a chance, I was in Paris, I'd go to Notre Dame because millions and millions and millions of people went there for the intent of reaching God. It's the same here, reaching healing. And the same if you go to the Western Wall in Jerusalem, where the Jews pray. It's the same feeling there. It's just a wall, but when the intent, as my friend and colleague Chopra would say, the history is in the ozone, it's in the air. And so it doesn't ever leave. The energies of our past and our future, as I said earlier, there's no beginning and there's no end. There's a continuum of life moving forward. Enjoy it. Just sit back, relax, and allow life to tell you how great it can be. It was a pleasure to be with you today, and I send my love to all of you in Germany and all over the world. Be well, and we're all going to be fine as long as you learn to say the word 99999. God bless.
I stopped the recording, and for 1 minute we talk privately. Thanks very much, Dr. Clement. Herzlichen Dank fürs Vorbeischauen und auf bald.